"We of the craft are all crazy" is a quote from British poet Lord Byron. Bipolar, also known as manic depression, affects 5.7 million people in the United States, which is 2.6 part of the population, and is the most commonly diagnosed mental illness for those who are affiliated with the arts. In a way, it is like being touched by fire and can spark sudden creativity in those who have it, but can also lead to patterns of dangerous psychosis and eventual deterioration. Many people have misconceptions about what bipolar is, thinking it just consists of ups and downs in mood, but really there are many, many more variables than that. I will explore how music therapy can be benevolent, and I will try to also explore all those variables and examine other more philosophical underpinnings of the illness in an attempt to fuse together the spiritual side of the illness and the neurological side. In Kay Redfield Jamison's personal memoir chronicling her battle with bipolar, she delineates the artist's temperament. I have strewn together a brief list of some musicians who suffer from bipolar and experience what she describes in her book, Touched by Fire. She writes, first, there is the fury aspect of feeling that initially could compel the artistic voyage. She describes it as being a fierce energy, high mood, and quick intelligence, and a sense of visionary. But once you crash from the validity of what is described as hypomania, not fully manic but in a state of blissful thinking, you come down from it and you experience vastly darker moods, grimmer energies, and occasionally bouts of madness. As she writes, this is what forms the common view of the artistic temperament. Kurt Cobain, Demi Lovato, Gustav Mahler, Bruce Springsteen, and Robert Schumann all shared this artistic temperament. The highs and lows may be more or less defined for some people depending on brain chemistry. But some of the greatest artists like Van Gogh and Jackson Pollock were believed to have created their best work while experiencing bouts of highs, also known as mania. According to research, bipolar is said to be genetically endowed. How, but environmental stressors may trigger it in certain individuals. However, there is not enough research being done to isolate specific control groups in order to ascertain the degree to which it is genetic versus environmental. In an independent study, it has been determined that the usage of certain drugs, predominantly the combination of small doses of amphetamine with moderate to large inhalations of THC, can exacerbate or manifest as symptoms of bipolar in people who have slight genetic predisposition, because it alters the functioning of the nerve impulses which control thoughts and can completely shift our perception of reality. What ties the bipolar community together is our unified experience of mania. Mania typically exists from age 18 to 24. But why? Mania is the spiritual side of bipolar. When experiencing mania, many people share similar experiences that they have achieved full enlightenment and begin to understand themselves on a level that they never did before. They feel as if they have transcended into another dimensional realm, as it is so commonly described. But people with mania can tend to get in trouble, either at work, in school, with the law, or in a structured environment, for not obeying specified societal behavioral norms and instead transcend into their own spirit, not realizing the consequences of their action. Behavior classified as unnormal exhibited by those affected by mania include running naked in public, delving into lengthy conversations with passerbyers, making outlandish, uncharacteristic comments, and trying to solve the algorithm of the universe. So, why does mania occur for some people and not for others? Mania is the beginning of a journey into the spirit. In Freudian terms, the total eclipse of the ego or collapse of the sun. This happens to young adults predominantly when there is a crossroad in their lives, questioning their systematic structure of beliefs, whether they fall in line with their culture, theological, or spiritual positioning. It is their individual choice whether they want to get help or not. If untreated, The kindling effect may take place, which occurs as flashbacks to the mania that occurred, in incrementally big and bigger chunks, as the kindling flame eventually takes over their brain. Usually, the onset of the manic episode is triggered when a major life-altering event takes place, either a breakup, a bad trip, or the loss of a loved one. This is what shamanism refers to as soul loss, which is a spiritual rendering of major depression or unipolar, also known as the dismantling of the ego. While there is a new conceptualization in one's own perception of consciousness, everything begins to process at a lower wavelength than before. After experiencing an upset, you still perceive the things you perceive, but just on a lower vibrational frequency. And then once that lower wavelength of the upset, or as the shamans say, soul loss, is offbeat with your highest vibrational self, it creates higher tonality, which puts you off-centered and can lead to the counteraction of the false self, the self that died off during the process of soul death when we were experiencing unipolar. With the ego, we carry many fears. For example, as a student, we fear failure. So when the ego dies, we let go of all the fears we had bottled up and just accept what the future holds. Music therapy has a very positive implications for helping stabilize patients with bipolar disorder. Playing music can help to negate the scary memories of mania and help to alleviate depressive symptoms. Music can mimic the shift in frequency that bipolar patients experience during manic symptoms of ego collapse and help them channel leftover trauma caused by an emotionally charged event. In fact, music has such a strong effect on our emotions, and since our emotions impact how we interact and experience the universe, music can potentially change our entire perception of ourselves and how we experience the world around us. Music can even help in a small way. Being in a hospital can be a dehumanizing experience and can be lonely and scary. Imagine how having a music therapist come may add some ray of hope into someone who feels desolate. In a small study of 26 patients who experience mental illness, it was found that 15 sessions of music therapy treatment had drastically improved their depression and anxiety. After or during the manic period is the inevitable hospitalization. That's when concerned family and friends begin to show their faces and try to find answers. It's almost as if we were asking to be labeled. We want them to tell us there's something wrong with us, just for reassurance that our experiences didn't make us crazy. Even though having mental illness is considered crazy, we have to take pills to be normal. According to the DSMV, there are three main types of bipolar: bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and bipolar 1 with mixed episodes. The difference between bipolar 1 and 2 is that the mania is a lot less severe in bipolar 2, and you are more likely to be in a habitual state of depression. I thought it'd be fun to classify some of my favorite childhood icons. During this process, I felt as if I was playing the role of doctor, and it almost felt as if I was disrespecting their character by labeling them. I assigned some characters from my past to get a point across. Many of the icons we look up to and emulate as kids and adolescents, and maybe even as adults, possess character flaws that we could easily have adopted, or some traits that we picked up on. For instance, Madeline was a character I always wanted to relate to as a child. If anything, she had bipolar, and it would be her. An outlier of society, a parvenu, never in line, always last to get into place. The media plays a bigger role than we think in the status of our mental health. But for me, Madeline represents the purity of preserving the inner child and the deep-seated feelings of unconditional love that are so prevalent in the initial dismantling of the ego. It starts off with something very innocent. You are holding on to this long-lost childhood memory, yet it sustains your happiness. And once a fear has been built up over that lost childhood desire, one can no longer live without their basic needs being met. Think Maslow's hierarchy of laws. Studies reveal that bipolar patients make more mistakes in facial emotional recognition than most people. So, if music therapy puts us in touch with our emotions, clearly there is a link here. This could in part be caused by trauma affiliated with mania, losing deep integral part of your identity. You lose touch with your ability to connect emotionally. Other studies show that bipolar patients have difficulty adapting to new stimuli, which reveals their which reveals their less use of brain plasticity. Music is believed to elicit the functioning of brain plasticity because all different parts of your brain light up at the same time. When patients who suffer from bipolar after the manic episode, many of the synapses in their brain are destroyed. Music can help restore these synapses by helping to regulate emotions, which promote stability and activate brain plasticity, which create higher level of functioning. As bipolar is becoming more and more common, how can we address healing it with limited research and being conducted and little funding? The more we know, the less we know. A report published by the Depression and Bipolar Support Alliance revealed that people saw 3 to 4 doctors before getting diagnosed as bipolar. In the future, I plan to open up a nonprofit for low-income patients who cannot afford health care so that they will get the proper care and treatment that they need. Using music therapy is one of the models of recovery. Yes, you may take lithium and feel better, but struggling with this illness is about connecting to the most human force you can connect with, which is playing music, and that is the most important thing to me.